The Breen are infighting over a new leader. The Orions are regrouping, and war is always a possibility. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we're doing a review of Star Trek Discovery, Season 5, Episode 2, Under the Twin Moons, written by Alan McElroy, directed by Doug Aarniokoski. And we've got a very special guest today, everybody. You'll never guess. This guest is a co-executive producer or executive producer on all 30 episodes of Star Trek Picard. He's directed 5 episodes of Picard, 1 short trek, and 5 episodes of Discovery, including today's episode. Guess who it is? It is Doug Aarniokoski. Thank you so much, Doug, for hanging out with us. We really appreciate it.
How are you, fellas? Good to see you again. Nice to see you. Nice to see you.
Awesome.
Oh, good to see you. Good to see you.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
well, let's just get into this. First things first, you've done 5 Discovery, 5 Picard, 1 short treks. They film in different locations. Can you tell us a little bit about just kind of the difference between the 2 shows? Like when you walk in one, is it like a gigantic stage and the other one is more of a down home feel, or what's the situation there?
Interesting question. Yes. So Discovery is shot in Toronto, as I'm sure all you guys know, and you've spoken about it many times. Pinewood Studios, and they have 2/3 of the sound stages on the lot, including a massive Pinewood soundstage that has been there for many a motion picture, and Star Trek has had it for years and years. I mean, they came in and they, basically took over Pinewood. So yeah, they have really incredibly impressive sound stages in Toronto. Now, Star Trek Picard was supposed to shoot in Toronto, and at the 12th hour, we pulled back to Los Angeles, and so we were scrambling to try and find soundstage space, which you would think is an easy endeavor, right? But so much filming that goes on, and all the major lots, Paramount, Universal, Warner Brothers, they were packed, they were full, they were booked, and we knew we had 3 seasons, so we needed to get in there, lock in. These sets are massive. I mean, you see the bridges on Discovery, you see the ships on Picard. Like, these aren't detective shows where you can go in, build your set, film it, fold it up, put it away, and then when the next season starts, you unpack it and you build it up. I mean, these things are so intricately built and lights built into them. And, they're 360 degree with a view screen and green screen and all the LED lights that are built in. So we need to be able to live somewhere literally for 3 years. Well, what we thought was going to be 3 years until, of course, COVID hit and so on and so on and so forth. It ended up being 4.5 years. So we shot up in Santa Clarita Studios, which is a small little studio out near Valencia, Santa Clarita, out in that area, which is about an hour outside of LA. So a much smaller studio space, a much smaller soundstage space. I mean, literally, we were building right up to the fire lanes in every soundstage just to maximize the square footage. So yes, long answer to your question. It's a significantly different environment when you walk into Toronto. It's all of the studio system and all the glitz and the glamour, and then there's little Santa Clarita studio that sits up there on top of a hill, and it's quite idyllic.
Oh, my question is, Doug, I want to ask you, this is one of the few productions that had such a long break between the last season and now this final season. So what is it like getting back into speed for getting into this 5th season after such a big break? What's that like?
It's tough because, like I said, there is such a long period of time in between each season. And so I find myself going back and just rewatching, right? Like doing my homework, literally. And going through the past seasons, remembering where these character arcs were, where we left off season 4, who's there, who's not, who's new. I mean, all these characters have such rich backstories, and they're always intertwined and changing throughout the season. So yeah, I mean, literally, I sit down just like every other fan, and I go through every single episode, making my notes, reminding myself, where these characters were, because, the actors although they played these parts and they've, been doing it for 4 years, they come back for season 5. I'm sure many of them are doing other projects and they've dropped these characters and they've got to sort of reinvest in who they are and where they were. And so it takes a little bit of reminding. I was episode 2, right? But episode 2 and episode 1 kind of shot at the same time because episode 1 didn't have all of its elements for the visual effects and the AR wall ready to go. So we were sort of dancing together, shooting simultaneously, Tunde and I. So there was a lot going on. Not only was it, here we are at season 5 again, but oh, by the way, we're going to shoot 1 and 2 together. So there was a lot of, okay, now you're with Doug today, then you're with Tunde for this week, then you guys go back to Doug for a week. So there was a lot of handing off. And so Tunde and I really had to sort of pass the baton, right? And then he and I would have a lot of prep conversations about, all right, like Mullen Locke, for instance, right? Who are these new characters? Well, where are they headed? Where are their stories? What's their backstory? How much do we want to see? How much do we not want to see? What is their personality? How does it play together? I had shot some stuff with Mullen Locke before Tunde had. So I was sort of establishing their relationship in an episode that was the second episode, not the first, right? So there was a lot of that. It was almost like we were co-directing, He would come over to me, we'd watch the scene, we talk about it. He's like, yeah, this is how we want it to go. And I'd be like, great. So then we'd pass the baton and I'd move on. And then I'd leave, he'd shoot, I'd go to his set, I'd see what he's doing, and then we'd go from there. So it was a really unique situation. And like I said, a lot of homework. I mean, even as we were shooting, watching his dailies, right? Trying to make sure that the synchronicity between the 2 episodes were really aligned, especially when, involving a lot of new characters, quite a few new characters, in fact.
That sounds like a really difficult undertaking for the 2 of you to be scheduling. And it sounds like you're very fortunate that the 2 of you have such a good working relationship that it worked out, but that does seem like could be pretty tough. One thing I noticed, Doug, and I don't really have the director's eye, I'll be the first to admit that. But one thing I was noticing is you tend to do and enjoy a lot of very slow moving dolly shots that just give you a little bit more to look at. We don't want to go too quickly and make the scene seem like it's more tense than it needs to be, but just a little so that it's not stagnant. And so we can see more of the set, and it was a very nice, comfortable feel. And I noticed it. Is that something that you just naturally enjoy doing, or something that you thought the script called for?
It's really based on the story, right? It's really based on what's happening in front of the audience's eyes. Alex Kurtzman, since I've worked with him, which has now been, since Sleepy Hollow. I don't even know how long ago that was. He has always had a mantra, if you will, right? And that is, what does the shot make you, the audience, feel? What does the shot make you feel? Right? And so I literally have that. I'm shocked I don't have a tattoo of it, because it's always something that I'm thinking about as I'm reading the script, as we're setting up the shots, as we're trying to figure out what we want the camera to be doing, because we don't always want it in the way. And yet sometimes we feel like we need to give the audience something that maybe is a perspective they have never seen before. And I have to say, based on episode 2, which I directed, and what Olatunde did in episode 1, they're 2 very different episodes, right? I mean, episode 1 is shot out of a cannon. And I mean, that thing is just like, it's DEFCON 5, like it's just going the whole time, right? And so when it came to 2, it was almost like I felt that the story needed to just drop back a little bit, get back to where we were, what had happened in episode 1, the repercussions of what had happened, what Saru was going through, what Burnham was going through. Now that Book was there, right? And Book is back on the ship. So there's a lot that needed to take place. And I felt like the camera really needed to be an extension of what the audience was feeling between these characters at these pivotal moments, right? So clearly when we're on the planet, it's a different beast. And yet when we're back on the ship, it really felt like there were characters that needed to be not reintroduced, but almost re-recognized to the audience, right? And so that's why we chose to to move the camera the way that we did.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to ask you about this new captain character that you have in this season, Captain Rainier. Is it Rainier?
Yeah, Rainier. Yeah.
Yeah. He brings a lot of energy, new energy to the table. A little bit of, rough around the edges. Somebody that in the beginning kind of has an entrance where you're like, I hate this guy.
Yeah.
Know.
I love him.
But kind of like the Captain Shaw of this series, right? Of this show, and Ryan loves those kinds of characters. He loves characters that rub you the wrong way.
That's a good connection, though. That's a good connection.
That's a great connection.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you tell us about working with him and this character? Yeah.
He's amazing. Again, new to the ship, new to the crew, new to the cast. Season 5, right? There's a lot of history backing into that. And it's so interesting that you say a Shaw, if you will.
Totally.
Because, look, Shaw is Quint, right? Quint in Jaw, right? Like, you hate that guy. You hate Quint, right? When he comes onto the ship and he's let's catch that shark, right? And there's a little bit of,
then you start easing onto him. You start liking him.
You start going, all right, I understand who this guy is. Like, this guy's just driven, right? Like, he's got a directive. He's got a target. He knows what he's firing at. He knows what he's doing. He's got the experience. You may not like that he's rough around the edges, but at the end of the day, he's trying to catch the shark, right? He's trying to catch the shark, right? And I think that Shaw had that in Picard, and I think you're going to see. In Discovery a character that is tough to like, but eventually is hard not to love.
Now, as a big
he says, "I'm not a yes man," and then zips it up, and that zip was extra loud. I was like, "Well, that's a nice loud zip right there." I was like, "Let's go."
That was all planned. That was all planned in rehearsal. When we rehearsed it, and like Callum's a great actor, and he was thinking about those moments. It's like, I want to let's put a button on that scene, And so we were like, well, you're there, and you've been let go, and you're looking out into space. It's over, right? You've been cut from the team, and he's kind of relaxed, and then he's just like, I think I'm gonna, and I was like, yeah. And our writer was like, yes, fucking great moment. It's like, let's go to war.
But you know what I was thinking?
Yeah,
when I saw
if it was a tie, it was like you tighten up your tie. It was like, let's go to work. I liked it. Sorry, Brian.
Yeah.
No, not at all. My first thought was, I wonder if they planned on having him be the first officer for season 6 and 7 too. Like, I'm immediately already thinking, I wonder what, but I'm like, I haven't even gotten through episode 2 yet of season 5, and I'm already trying to map out what could or couldn't have happened. But I wanted to ask
great twist, by the way, too, also, because I didn't expect the first officer moment. That
I didn't either.
As a viewer, because I was instantly thinking book, because Saru kind of planted that seed a little bit earlier. So just for writing, just a shout out to Alan in his writing style for keeping me guessing in that moment and throwing me like a kind of some bait to think that it's going to be book. So I like that.
Nice job. Yeah, it's well done. It's really well done.
I definitely agree with that. Like, I thought I knew where it was going, and I was wrong, which is always a good thing. If you're wrong, that's almost always a good thing.
That's right.
But now we had a lot of scenes on the planet scenes with Doug Jones, presumably his stunt double, running around. And it kind of reminded me of the Next Generation first season episode of Arsenal of Freedom, where Tasha Yar and Data are shooting these AI drones going around. If you remember that, really reminded me of that a lot. But there was a lot of action there. It was a beautiful set. Can you tell us a bit about, the set? Was that an outdoor set? Did you figure out a way to just use the wall, or what was that?
There was no wall involved. That was all on location. Nice. So we went to outside of Toronto, and I forget the name of the state park, if you will, right? This beautiful state park, and it was just incredible. And so what we did, because we're trying to make it look like this sort of lush green area, but yet you still have to be able to film in it, right? So you can't just go to this incredibly dense forest and then try to navigate how you're going to work around it. So we took a moderately dense forest and then brought in just what I can only describe as a shit ton of trees, plants, rocks, anything that we needed to sort of set the stage. And we had this incredible art department and greens department that literally every night when we wrapped, because as soon as the sun went down, we were done, they would come in for hours and move all these massive trees with trucks and tractors and set everything up for the next day's filming. So we had to be very sort of quadrant oriented as to where we were filming each day, because we didn't have nearly enough trees to cover the scope of what we were doing. So we had to keep sort of recycling and moving down the road, if you will. But yeah, that was all on location. All the stone hand, stone foot, the face, everything you see is all sculpted by the art department. It is all practical. All those things were built out there, specifically placed for the geography and the blocking of all the scenes. And it was amazing. And let me be really clear about one thing. 90–85% of what you saw Saru doing was Doug Jones.
Oh, that's our guy right there.
Yeah.
He was action Saru. He was rocking it. And listen, he has a great stunt double who did a lot of the running and the falling and the tumbling and all that stuff, because those hoop shoes are not easy to move around in. But Dougie did quite a bit. And it was fun too. I have to tell you, the running stuff, when he's in high motion, high speed running, we went back because we were trying to figure out how to do it practically, right? I love practical effects. I love visual effects, and I love Jason Zimmerman and his team and all that they bring to it. But sometimes in an environment like that, where it's not a very heavy special effects laden set and story, we didn't want to all of a sudden just jump to digital doubles or, jump to visual effects gags or jump to the stage where the AR wall. So when I worked with Len Weissman on Sleepy Hollow, we had talked about how to make all of the sort of creatures and bad guys move quickly, right? We had a whole werewolf sequence one time on Sleepy Hollow, and he said, hey, go back and look what I did years and years ago when I did, what's the movie, the werewolf movie with the vampires and that he did with Kate Beckinsale.
Not Interview with the Vampire, no.
No. He did a series. It was like Underworld.
Oh, Underworld.
He said, go back and look at the first Underworld when Michael Sheen's character is chasing the car in the alley and then jumps on it. He goes, I did that all practically. And so I was like, what? So I went back and looked at it, and I called him, and he said, okay, here's what I did. I hooked up a carpet to a car, and the car pulled the carpet, and the stunt guy ran on the carpet, but because it was moving like a treadmill, he could run twice as fast, and it was practically happening. So we did that in the woods. So when Saru is running away from the drones, his stunt double is running on a huge piece of carpet that's probably 30 yards long, attached to a truck that is hauling ass, and he's basically just trying to keep up. So we shot that all practically. Very, very old school. Len Weissman in the world,
that's
awesome.
Amazing. You need that track to be perfectly flat for something.
Had to be perfect. Had to grade the road, because any bump and he's gone. He flies off, right? And if he doesn't start off quick enough, he gets pulled, and it's just inertia, and he's down. So it was a lot of can we do it, trial and error. And once they got it, we just started filming, and they did it about 5 times. Luckily, every time it was successful. But so a little bit behind the scenes, old school special effects, visual effects.
It's like what Cirroc and I do when we're at the airport, and there's that little thing. We're like, look how fast I'm running. Right? We do that all the time.
Exactly the MO sort of prototype as to why physically that works, right? And it worked beautifully.
Totally.
So
I had no idea. In my mind, I was like, oh, they played that at double speed. He's running. It's way more complicated than that, clearly. So I want to ask you, Doug, about your directing style. So when you're on the set and you're working with the actors, because there's moments I think that I think Sonique was just amazing. There's certain subtle facial expressions she gives. There's moments she just gives me so much emotion in her movements, her head movements, her facial expressions. I just love watching her. And my question is basically about your directing style. Do you do you take the actors to the side and give them some kind of like some conversation before it takes? Do you just have conversations in general about the material beforehand and already have that kind of understanding? Like, what is your style like in the
Look,
moment?
it's a little bit of both. I mean, when you're talking about Sonequa, you're talking about just a fine-tuned instrument, right? I mean, she knows the camera, she knows the lenses, she could be directing and acting at the same time. Like she's that good, right?
Yeah.
So for me, again, depending on the story and where we are and the actors that we're working with, I'll go to Sonequa because that was your example. What we do is we rehearse after or during the rehearsal, we just talk about the scene, right? And what the intention is of the scene and where the moments are in the scene, right? Because a lot of times, and this is not necessarily Sonequa, but a lot of times actors are, they're reading their words, remembering the words, right? The blocking comes into play. Where's the camera, right? It's a lot about being as organic, right, and real as you can and not acting. So a lot of times it just helps to talk about it, right? And like the intention of this scene is this, right? And remember that it comes after this. And, this beat here is talking about season 3 when you and Saru, right? Because there was a lot of that with Saru, especially in his quarters, right? About second chances and we're going back to season 1, right? So that's the kind of stuff
with Tilly too. With Tilly's character, there was a lot of moments there where it's like back to this.
That's right. And so that's the type of thing where that's my job when I'm dissecting the script and the dialogue and going over it with Alan and Michelle and Alex and Tunde and talking about what these moments are and where these beats want to land. And again, how we want to photograph those moments, right? Because as directors, we all have tone meetings before we shoot. And we go through every scene with all the writers, the producers, and we talk about the editors, and we talk about what do we want out of this scene, right? So when you're talking about Sonequa, we really want to make sure we capture that moment where maybe she's not saying anything, but she's having a moment with Saru, or she's having that moment with Tilly, or she and Book, when Book is back on the ship now, right? Where are we? Like, where is their relationship? Like, where is their emotional arc at this point, right? Because again, like you said, it's been over a year since we've done this. So what are those moments we have to make sure that we capture and that we make sure we put on film in a way that makes the audience feel like what, right? Because if I shoot it too far back, then I'm not getting the emotionality that I'm going to get in a close-up, right? Sometimes I need to be a 2-shot because I need to see them together, right? So what are those moments, right? So you try to capture them as much as you can before you even start filming, right? We just talk about it in rehearsal so that everybody's aware that at that beat, at that moment, on that line, when that pause happens, this is where the lens is going to be. This is where the camera wants to be. This is what I want to try to grab. So, it's a lot. It's a lot, but you're very fortunate when you're working with somebody like Sonequa because she gives you that and then some, right? I mean, she always goes above and beyond the page every time. Walt Disney used to say, let's plus it, right? Like, let's give it more than it is even dreamt of. And she pluses every single scene she's in. I mean, look, Star Trek fans, what a gift. What a gift.
Yeah, I agree. I want to also compliment you, Doug, on something that I saw in this episode as well. It was one of my I just enjoyed the shot because Star Trek has a long history of the walk and talk through the corridor shot. It's just part of the lore of the show. It's somebody, Captain Picard and Riker walking down the corridor together, or whoever it is. There's these corridor promenade shots. But you did a great one in this one with Admiral Vance and Sonequa. And I was just looking at the set, and it felt like I was like, "How big is this set?" Because you guys were turning corners, and the way you were editing it, it made it look like I was like, "This must be like the biggest corridor." So very well lit, a few lens flares here and there, which I always wonder if they're added in post or is that something that's caught in real time. But it was something caught my eye as well. But I just enjoyed the shot. I thought it was a great walk and talk.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's a pretty good size set. It's not as big as you might hope or as one might want as a director. But look, there's limitations, right? You can't build a whole spaceship, right? So it's a little bit of that. You're moving around, you're going over here, you come back, they start over there, you stop this line, you go back to that, right?
Yes.
So it's a lot of putting the puzzle.
But it looks seamless. It looks seamless, though. That's what I'm giving you the credit for.
Again, that's a tribute to our editor, right? Who just made it very seamless. And, Chris Malby, who was the DP, who is amazing this season. Just wait till you see what he and Phil Lanyon have done. They're the co-DPs. Yeah, look, the lens flares, it's a little bit of both, right? So when you're on the bridge, there's some natural flares based on the way that the lights have been positioned and the type of lighting they're using. Sometimes it's as old school as flashlight in the lens as we're walking by, and sometimes it's visual effect, right? So you're never really going to know which one it is or which one it isn't. All I can tell you is that, sometimes they work, and like life, sometimes they don't, right? Sometimes you got the flashlight there, and you don't quite hit it right, and it just fucking blasts out the lens, and it doesn't work. Sometimes it's just like, it's like a great meal, right? It's perfect. And then sometimes you can't get in there, right? So we've got to do it in post. So that's kind of the beauty of it. But yeah, thanks. That was one of my favorite scenes, only because it worked out so well, right? When you're reading it's 3 pages of people walking down a corridor, it's slightly daunting, right? It's like, how do you keep it interesting? And how does it not get boring? And yet, how do you stay with the characters and get the information and the emotion that needs to be conveyed to the audience, right? So it's a lot of trying to sort of pull those strings. You don't just set the camera up and start walking. There's a lot that goes into it because you can't stop at the wrong place because sometimes you run out of set, right? So you can't be in that emotional moment and it's great. And then we hit the wall and there's nowhere else to go. We're like, fuck, we got to go back, right? So all that's got to be plotted out and you do it in
timing.
Yeah.
Wow.
It looked great.
Yeah, I mean, it's a testament to all your hard work and your crew's hard work that it looks so amazing and it's so beautifully delivered. And it feels like you could teach directing, honestly. When I was listening to you, I was like, I feel like I'm taking a class. This is great. Like, you can actually teach directing. I don't know if you've ever considered it, but we really, really appreciate your time. We appreciate your work. Fingers crossed. Don't know if it's going to happen, but fingers crossed. There's another Doug Aarniokoski episode somewhere down the line in season 5. I don't know if that'll happen, but hopefully, or in some other form of Star Trek. But Doug, thank you so much for hanging out with us. We really appreciate you and your time.
Thank you.
Guys, I love hanging out with you guys. I love talking Star Trek. It's I was always a Trekkie in training when I came to Discovery years, and now I'm a full-fledged Trekkie. But listen, to you guys, to your fans, to everyone who watches the show, thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts. Like you said, the crew works so hard. The cast works so hard, but there is so much love. And I think season 5 is really just one big ball of that love that hopefully everybody is going to enjoy and send it off into space with a lot of happy thoughts and memories. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Doug.
Love it.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, stick around. We will be covering this episode a bit more. We'll be right back on The Seventh Rule. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello.
Here are the trivioids of the week. Man, wasn't Doug amazing? That guy is a freaking fantastic interview. Great.
Some insight there, too. A lot of insight.
Absolutely. Love that dude. Another Doug we love is Saru might be stalling on his final day aboard the Discovery. The Breen are infighting over a new leader. The Orions are regrouping. War is always a possibility. Michael Burnham plays with a hologram mouse. Dr. Culber knows more about the spirits his abuela used to pray to than he knows about Locke and Maul. God, that is a tough. I shouldn't have wrote that down. Maul is human. Locke is a mystery. Jet Reno coined the nickname Action Saru. The friends and family entrance is sometimes in the back. Meline is the daughter of Cleveland Booker IV. Do not touch the swamp kelp when it is in bloom. Commander Rayner is not a yes man. And I'm going to try this one once more. Dr. Culber knows more about the spirits his abuela used to pray to than he knows about Maul and Locke. That was a good one.
All right. Print. Print.
Yeah. Cut, print. All right. Uh, Real quick, I caught two non-appearance mentions. One for Jet
Okay.
Reno because she coined the
Yep.
phrase, the nickname Action Saru, and also Saru related is Tarina. We did not see Tarina, but Michael Burnham and Saru talked about Tarina. Nice moment there.
Okay. Yeah.
Did you get that
Um,
feeling that it was kind of like Arsenal of Freedom? Remember that episode with the
I did, because they had the drones. They were shooting at the
yes,
drones.
the AI drones that were like these killer
As
drone
soon as
bots.
you said it literally clicked in my head. Like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I saw.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I did. I think for some reason I just don't think Action Saru is gonna stick with me. It's just not. It doesn't flow off the tongue. It's not like the answer. All of
I already
that.
got a shirt made. No,
Yeah,
I'm just
right.
kidding. Here it is.
Action Saru. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
it's
picturing him
just
like this, like a Charlie's Angels pose, like
yeah. It's just not. It doesn't roll for me. I'm thinking of maybe is there another one? Um,
I know what you're thinking.
Soru. So, yeah, Soru think you can dance. No,
I thought you were gonna say Sarukin.
that's another one. That would work.
Yeah.
uh, yeah,
Okay.
I just don't know about Action Saru.
I love it. It's a superhero. Uh, Now I forgot what. Oh, here's something really interesting. Um,
Yeah.
so they Captain Rayner and Tilly and oh damn, the others will say
Okay.
mentioned the Promelians.
Oh
Now
yeah, I heard that.
the Promelians, now when they said that, I was like, I feel like that's got to be something. So I looked it up because Star Trek likes to drop in these little hints here and there, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they called it the ancient Promelian burial grounds, the Acropolis or some kind of Acropolis.
Right, right, right,
Promelian
right.
Acropolis. Yeah.
So I think the other person in the scene was Adira. Adira, Tilly, and Rayner. I think it was the
Yeah.
three of them. Um, by the way, I saw some great stuff from Adira, some really good acting by Blue Del Barrio, great choices with the delivery. So I looked up the Promelians, and it is a Star Trek alien, cannot be a coincidence, and it is from the Next Generation. Do you remember the episode in which it opens up with Geordi LaForge sitting on the beach with a nice lady and he's talking with her, and then the violin guy comes in, and then he's kind of annoying, and then it doesn't work out, she's not interested, and then Geordi falls in love with a hologram approximation of a lady who created the warp drive, right? This lady, Dr. Leah Brahms. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
he's got this approximation. Anyway, that episode was called Booby Trap. And
Okay.
they even showed this on Discovery, these guys, right? They showed this for a second, I
Yeah.
believe.
Yeah.
So that was the episode called Booby Trap. And the Promelians were the ones that made that booby trap that the Enterprise was stuck in. So that's why, so it's really interesting because they mentioned 1,000-year-old technology, which works. And so that was Discovery giving us another little wink and a nod. One of those things where they go like, you better listen to every word or you're going to miss something. And I'm sure I still did miss stuff, but that was a really cool nod to the Promelians of Next Generation episode Booby Trap.
Yeah, of course, I can't forget that episode because it was one of the few episodes Jordy got some kind of like, character development,
Right.
even though it wasn't, my cup of tea with his bad dating things. But we at
What?
least we got a Jordy episode.
He's got a self-help book coming out soon with dating tips, I think.
Yeah, right. Uh, yeah, these new characters too that they have in, obviously they're going to give us some kind of, uh, you know, connection between Book and this Maul character.
Yeah.
You could just tell, even before they gave you the kind of exposition, there was too much going on every time Book would look at her. He was playing it.
Yeah, so Locke and Maul, played by Locke is the alien that's played by Elias Tufexis, and Maul is the human. They said that she's a human, played
Yeah.
by Eve Harlow, and these two, and so that was really interesting that she's the daughter of the mentor of Cleveland Booker, aka
Mhm.
Book. So that was very interesting. Of course, that was well written, well delivered by the acting, well delivered by the
I thought
director,
so.
because when he says, hang on a second, here's where the writing is good, is when he says, can you DH her, or whatever term they use, DH her to 7 years and 3 months. When he said and 3 months, that's when you know that means he knew her. That's when
Mhm.
he knew her. She meant something to him because he knew the exact last time he saw her and how old she was. Otherwise, if he just said, can you DH her to 7 years old, approximate or something, then he's just trying to figure stuff out. But when he said those
Mhm.
3 months, that's A+ writing, in my opinion. That's them telling us, huh, I bet that means he knows her. So that was really good.
Yeah, a lot of good acting in this episode. There's just moments. I think the Rainier guy does a great job with his performance. He has that conflicted. He's got the bravado. You can tell he cares about his job though, and he loves what he does. It doesn't come from a bad place. It just comes from this kind of passion that he has. So that's well done for me as well. But I love Tilly's character and her performances. She's just so good at delivering lines to me, and
Yeah.
she makes things look very casual and light. And she'll throw in things like, in the way she delivers the lines to me seems natural. When she says, "I'll keep my eyes peeled," and then kind of goes like,
Yeah.
"That's a weird thing to say."
Yeah, she's like, which sounds kind of gross, actually.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the way she delivers that sounds like it's the first time she's saying it, right? And it feels like that's normal conversation. Like, hey, you know what? That does sound kind of weird when you say that.
Hmm.
It feels natural. So she takes whatever's written on the page and delivers it to me as good as you can, because I love her performances. She has this moments of just like, when, for example, Adira says, "I really missed you," and she's like, "Oh," and she takes it in a little bit more and sells me on it to a very good way. So I really love her performances in the show in general.
What kind of first officer do you think Rayner will be? And do you think he'll last?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I think he'll be a good first officer. What kind though? Combative, um, and somewhat kind of like trying to override Burnham, because I felt like that's particularly what he's been doing so far, is questioning her judgment or overriding her decisions. So she's like, "Hey, don't shoot the mountain." He's like, "Ah, what are you talking about? Don't shoot the mountain. We shoot the mountain." Whatever she says, he's almost like, "Screw that. We can do. I can do it." So, you know, combative is my number one kind of gut feeling.
That's her number one
Um,
too.
yeah,
Uh,
it is too.
so no, I mean because he's her number one now. So
Oh, but it's
yeah,
also her number one instinct too, because she is combative. So it's
yeah.
weird because they're kind of similar in that regard. To me, she'll fly off the handle too.
Yeah, and I think that it's good that they had those first two episodes to kind of establish a respect amongst each other. Like now they respect one another. Like I don't think Rayner would have said yes to anybody. I think he kind of was like, no way. Actually, I like her. She's got grit. It's one of those things where she's like, or where he's thinking like that, for her, let's do it. Like it's a mission above all that he wants to see through. Remember, it's the mission above all. That's what they said about him. But, maybe certain things could have overridden it. But in this case, he's like, the mission above all, I respect her. Let's do it. Now, I just kind of wonder if he's going to last through the season, or if he's going to die, or if the mission's over and he's like, got to go. And Michael might be like, why? Where are you going? He'll be like, hey, the mission's over. I got to go. I don't know. I'm still now looking at everything through the lens of this is the final season. So how is everything going to play out? Even though when they shot it, it wasn't planned to be the final season.
Yeah, I think he sticks around. I think he's good for the show. What I like, the element that I think he brings that will be welcomed is conflict. And there's a level of conflict of him butting heads that I like. And I think there needs to be more conflict on the show. There's a lot of getting along.
Cirroc hates getting along.
Yeah,
he's like,
everybody's
get that out of here.
Well. Yeah, give me some conflict. I want some Odo Court, I want some friction, and there's a little bit of friction is good. A little bit of conflict is good. It makes for good storytelling. It's the pushback on somebody. It makes somebody, for me, it's from the audience perspective. It lets me know where Burnham's head is when she gets pushed back on something and she defends her point of view. So it kind of lets you know where a character stands. I also like their chemistry. For example, when they were in front of the president, Madam President, and Admiral Vance, and he kind of looks at her and is like, you had no problem speaking when we were doing it, so go ahead, or something to that effect,
Mm-hmm.
It was good chemistry to me, and so I like it.
Yeah. And now I'm super excited that we are going to be seeing Trill next. I was getting excited to maybe see Beta Z, or that's what the place is called. Yeah. But they said, no, we're going to Trill. So I'm like, all right, we'll take Trill too. Maybe we'll get to see both at some point, but we're just already almost out of time here. So I'm very much looking forward to the next episode because I want to see Trill and, find out what's going on that planet now that hundreds of years have gone by. But I'm also interested, and we're also interested in these friends of ours. Their names are Homer Frizzell, Dr. Anne-Marie Segal, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackmon-Tom, TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, Titus Mohler, Dr. Mohamed Noor, Tierney C. Dieckmann, Anil O. Polat, Joe Balsarotti, Mike Goo, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, live from Tokyo, the Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Justin Weir, Jake Barrett, Henry Unger, Allyson Leach-Heid, Julie Manasfi, Marcia, Classic Schreier, Greg K. Wickstrom out in Hawaii, Jed Thompson, Dr. Susan V. Gruner, Glenn Iverson, Dave Gregory, Tim Baum, and of course, Jason Okun. All right, everybody, we will see you next week. Looking forward to it. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. And until then, always remember the seventh rule.